Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Under the Shell, presented by Terrapin Sports Central. Here on episode 11, we have a very special interview with Steve Suter, former Maryland football player, who shared some interesting facts with us about his football career. After that, we'll discuss basketball, wrestling, and where Maryland will be going bowling. We're hitting the lanes, guys. I'm one of your co-hosts, Kevin Ireland, and I'm here joined by
Sam Jane,
Brendan Weissel,
Michael Big Mike Howes.
All right, let's pop into the interview.
Our next guest is a former two-time All-ACC wide receiver and return specialist for Maryland. He holds multiple return records in the ACC, including career punt return, touchdowns, and yards, and single-season punt returns and yards. You can find him calling color commentary for Terps football with Johnny Holiday now. Give it up for Steve Suter.
Thank you, Steve, for joining us.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, just to start it off for the listeners of this show, can you kind of explain what your football journey has been like?
Wow, my football journey. So let's start this as being a undersized, under-recruited high school athlete in Carroll County. You don't get much play out in Carroll County. And I was at a school called North Carroll. We didn't win many games, so it's not like the coaches were knocking on my door. My father and I put together a highlight tape, and we sent it out to, 30 colleges. Let's call it 30. And it was VHS. We're like recording, we're dubbing, we're trying to just get my name out there because nobody's coming to watch a 2-8 North Carroll high school team play, even though there may be a good player there and myself. So we sent out a bunch of highlight tapes to everybody. We get a couple nibbles, we get a couple letters from colleges, Boston College, Penn State, sent me letters, but it's just letters. It's not really a whole lot of interest. And then we sent one to Maryland. Now, Maryland, this is a good question because this is a good story. That Maryland had a junior combine is what they called it. If you were a junior in the state of Maryland in high school football, you would come to Maryland on their junior day. Everybody would come and you would do a 40-yard dash, a 40-inch vertical, and then a bench press. I believe I was doing, I'm not sure what it was. Maybe it was 185 pounds you were benching. It was like a mini combine, right? So there's 500 kids. I got the fastest 40, and I got the highest vertical leap, and I'm right in there with the 185-pound bench press. But Scott Chadwick, who used to be the Maryland's general manager of recruiting this past season, was my sophomore year assistant coach. Okay, so he knew me as a sophomore in high school. He goes on to become a coach at Bowie. And from there, he's talking to Coach Loxley, who was a running backs coach at the time at Maryland, saying, hey, you might want to come out here and watch this kid Suter run because I know him and he's pretty fast. So Coach Loxley comes out to the combine, hand times me. I run like a 4.41 or a 4.42 or whatever it is. He's very impressed. He comes over to me on the side, says, hey, you need to send us a tape. And I said, hey, I sent you a tape 6 months ago. Who knows where it is? So they go back in the closet, they find it, they dig it up, they read Suter's tape, they watch it. And boom, the rest is history. They sent it to Coach Vanderlyn at the time, who was the head coach. He watched the tape. He liked what he saw. They called my dad at the time and said, hey, we want to offer him a scholarship. Boom. That's how I got to Maryland. So it's kind of a wild ride. It wasn't like coaches were coming to see me play in person. It was all via me trying to recruit myself, because this is way before Huddle. I don't know if you're familiar with Huddle, but Huddle's everywhere. It's so easy for coaches just to log in and watch kids' highlights and watch kids' games right now. That was not the case for me. You had to self-recruit yourself if you were at a small area and you weren't winning state championships. You had to do it yourself. So my father and I did it, got ourselves on the Maryland's map, and then they liked what they saw when they saw the tape, and they gave me a scholarship. So that's how I got to Maryland.
And then when you got to Maryland, you transferred positions. So you said you were running back in high school. Then you moved to wide receiver. Was that difficult, like switching positions? Or was it easier than you thought it would be?
Yeah, so that's a great recruiting tool for Coach Loxley. He was honest with me. He said, hey, look, I know you're running back in high school. We're probably going to bring you in as an athlete because we don't know. You're going to you're going to try out a corner, you're going to try out at receiver, and we know that you have a little background at running back. So that was the thing. I came into Maryland, I didn't know what position I was going to play. I thought maybe I was going to be a corner at first, but that didn't work out. I went to their camp when I was a senior. Going into my freshman year, I played corner at their camp. So maybe they didn't like what they saw at me at corner, because when I got into camp, they were just put me immediately at receiver. But all right, let's just figure out this receiver thing. So I think that's what propelled me to be good at returning, because I've always been a running back at heart. I want the ball in my hands and then let my speed and my strength and balance take over. Let's see what happens. That's why I think punt returning and kick returning was such a good deal for me, is because of that, my running back background. Now, I loved playing receiver. I wish I would have got to play some type of running back at Maryland, whether it be on third downs and the scat back and throw me out, give me some swing screens and that kind of thing. But I was a little bit too ahead of my time, I think. The spread offense, I would have been such a good spread offense running back, but we weren't running those back in that time. So it is what it is. But we had a good time.
So you talk about obviously like the special teams and kind of the running back background. You get to become a returner. Did you have any of that experience coming into college, like in high school? Did you really just develop over time as a returner at Maryland?
No, yeah, I always did returning when I was in high school. I was the punt returner. I was a kick returner. I was the kicker. I mean, it's the same as most kids.
Just the athlete.
Right, that get recruited to go to D1. You're doing everything. And I was doing everything in high school. So none of that was new to me. I held in high school too, right? I'm not the kicker, but I'm holding. So it's crazy. I actually was the holder at Maryland my red shirt freshman year. I'm the holder for Nick Novak, who was the kicker. I held his first points ever. This is funny, right? So I'm a holder. Kickers are quirky. Novak, you're a little quirky, if you see this, right? But he was actually one of the more normal kickers that I've ever come across. But that's still a quirky kicker. So if we would be in practice and I'm holding a kick for Nick and he missed it or something, he would look down at me and I'd look up at him like, bro, that was a good hold. Don't look at me. You missed that, right? So my point is, it was so stressful holding, because catching the snap is stressful. Getting the laces right is stressful. You got to lean the ball a little bit. Like Novak wanted the ball tilted in towards me, like 6 degrees, whatever his number was, but you just like had to practice it, right? So it was crazy stressful. So I hold his first points that he's ever kicked. We're at Wake Forest. I get it. We're holding. Boom. And I'm not playing. I'm only the holder. Well, the next year I become the kick returner, and now I'm playing, and the punt returner, and now I'm playing a little bit more on offense. And I went right to the coach, Ryslewski, the special teams guy, said, you got to take me off holding, man. I can't handle it anymore. The stress is crazy. You got to get somebody that's dedicated to that, because I'm not dedicated to it. I'm handling punt return, kick return, wide receiver duties, and I can't be stressing over Novak thinking I had a bad hold or not. I just can't do it. So that was a meeting I had with him, the coach personally, and they made the switch. And I was like, thank gosh. Now Nick can't yell at me anymore.
Well, I'll take no offense to those kicker comments as a former kicker myself, but
yeah,
we read somewhere that you never caught a fair ball in college. Is that right? And if so, like, is there a reason for that? Like, you always just had confidence that you can get maybe a couple extra yards rather than just take the field position where it was?
Yeah, so that's probably, that's my favorite. You could call it a record, but it's not a record. It's an unofficial record, but that's my favorite one. I never caught a fair catch in my college career. It started my redshirt sophomore year when I became the returner. They had a halo rule. So you couldn't just crush a returner at the time. You had to give them a 2-yard or 1-yard cushion, or whatever they would call it. So I was like, I'm never going to call for a fair catch this season. There's no point. I'm going to catch it and fall forward for a yard or whatever. So that went. So I set the record, I think, for NCAA returns in a season with like 58 or whatever the number was. because I just never fair caught one. It just didn't make sense in my brain. And I took a couple shots for it, but no like crushing blows, because you couldn't do it. It'd be a penalty on you. So I just let that go. So the following season, they took that halo rule out. So my internal pride or lack of brain cells kicked in, and I was saying, hey, I didn't fair catch a punt the whole last season because of this halo rule. Now they took it away. What am I going to look like if I fair catch them now? I thought I would look like a chump. I didn't want to be a chump. I was like, I'm not doing it. So my whole junior year, I don't fair catch any punts, and I'm getting tattooed. But nobody's, I would say nobody on the staff has said you need to adjust this and you need to fair catch, because I haven't lost any punts. Yes, I'm getting crushed, but I'm not fumbling them, so we're good. And I'm catching them and then we're moving. And I thought it was a benefit to my punt return team as a whole, because they knew I'm not fair catching it. So every time we're returning a punt, block your butts off because I'm catching it. Let's try to score. And I think that's something that gets lost right now in this year, especially because you can fair catch kickoffs, you can fair catch punts like nothing. And I think guys on those teams don't try as hard every time because they assume it's going to be a fair catch, or they assume it's going out of the end zone. Well, that wasn't the case with me. I'm not fair catching it. My guys know it. So go hard because I'm going hard. And then the funny part of that is senior season now. Granted, I've had a great return career my sophomore season. Then I had a great one my junior season. Nobody's kicking me the ball anymore. My senior season, I go in, still nobody's kicking me the ball anymore. NC State at home, they're backed up in their own end zone. There's like 12 seconds left in the half, and they're about to punt. And my return coach says, Suter, you got to go out and fair catch this, because if the time runs out and I fair catch it, we get one untimed down. It's called a free kick, and you can just maybe Novak gets a shot at like a 60-yard field goal, and we get a free 3 points. Well, I'm pissed because I'm like, oh my gosh, I've gone 2.5 seasons, almost 3, never fair catching the ball. And now I got to go out here, and I'm not going to not do it because my coach is telling me to do it, but I'm pissed. And I go out there, it's 4th down, they kick it, and they shank it out of bounds. And I'm like, so I didn't have to fair catch it. And the streak is intact. Never fair caught a punt.
I mean, you must have been back there just absolutely praying that he kicked it out of bounds.
Oh, right. I don't even know what I was thinking right now. I just knew I was so pissed because I was like, I cannot not say now that I never fair caught. If I have to go out and fair catch this ball, regardless if it's a free kicker situation or not, I cannot not say I've never fair caught a punt. I was so mad. But when he kicked it out of bounds, I was pretty relieved. And that's a selfish moment for me, for sure. But it was something I took pride in. I think the team took pride in it behind me. So it wasn't just something that was all about me in that sense. Man, but I was about to be devastated. Luckily, I wasn't.
It was just meant to be, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
Got to be. Like, you got a lot of records. That's got to be up there in terms of one of the better ones you get to hold, man. Number one.
It's number one. And you know why it's number one? Because I also averaged 10 yards a return.
That's like opt for 1, 2 sometimes. That's special.
Never fair caught. I got hit for zeros left and right, like catch, boom, and I still averaged 10 yards a return. So that one, if you couple that with never fair catching and still averaging 10 yards a return, that's my favorite 2 records combined. The TDs are great. Yes, the yards are great, but it's all because I think my mentality was just different than anybody's ever been back there. Mm-hmm. Like, think about that. Nobody doesn't fair catch it. Nobody.
That's like kind of what I was going to ask is, like, you see now today, and you talked briefly on it, is, with the rules implemented, it's kind of designed to take away the idea of, like the return game, especially in kickoff because of the injury risk and things among that nature. And you see a lot of guys just go with the hands up and let it go out or fair catch it inside their 20 because they don't want, that type of risk. What do you played, obviously, you said you got popped a couple times. How do you couple the idea of, well, special teams is still such an important aspect and like you hate to see that go, I'm sure, in terms of as a former returner yourself, but also understanding like the health and the injury risk and do you understand why they're trying to remove it? Like, how do you contrast those two, would you say?
Yeah, so it's really well put. And as a returner, it's hard for me to I 100% get it because I'm a rational adult and I understand that play has a lot of injury potential, correct. But I also look at players like myself who, if you wanted to make something of yourself and then maybe have a chance to go into the next level, the return game was where I was going to make my money. That's where I was going to go to the NFL. That's where I played in the CFL and made the team because of my return ability. So to take a roster spot from somebody essentially because you're taking the return game out, that hurts my heart because I think it's very impactful. It could be the most impactful play of a game. A return touchdown, whether it's a punt or a kickoff return, it's crazy. It's the tone can flip, the momentum flips, everything shifts. So it's such a big play in the game. But yes, I've seen countless of returns that I was part of where guys got knocked unconscious on kickoff return. They're wedge busters or they're trying to stop the wedge bust and boom, lights out. And shamefully, watching that back in the day, I know we would chuckle on it. We rewind it, be like, yo, dude got rocked, dude got his bell rung, and you would rewind it and you'd show the clip and you'd see the guy get knocked out. So being naive and young at that point, you'd laugh about it. But now, as an older adult, I would understand, like, that is a play that clearly is unsafe for, let's call it, 8 of the 11 people on the field. So I get why they're trying to minimize that. Now, that is more on the kickoff return side. Now, the punt return side, that stuff hasn't changed. So, but you still see all that fair catching. And that just wasn't happening for me. We weren't going to do that. Even your punt safe, I don't know if you're familiar with punt safe, where it's like 4th and 2, the guys are on the 50-yard line, and we don't even have a return set up. I'm still not fair catching it. I'm just not going to do it. So that was my mentality. Luckily, I never lost any. And I feel bad for the returners now that can make an impact, but I don't know. I can't change the rules.
I see dudes like fair catching inside the 5. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, let it go.
What are you doing there? What are you doing there?
But that's like you talked about. You answered my next question, kind of in terms of the roster. And a lot of times with coaches now, you see like, at least in college, like Nick Saban is notorious for putting like guys who are first-round picks on special teams, and he talks about how it breeds like a certain mentality of like just gaining like the aspect of team knowledge and not necessarily, for a wide receiver catching a bunch of balls. Do you think then there's the differing perspectives? Like I remember last year, Michigan's number 1 receiver tore his ACL on a punt return and people were enraged. Like, why is he on special teams? This is like so how do you feel about that? Like putting a guy who's established himself on 1 or 2 sides of the ball on special teams. Do you get like maybe a little bit like we should try somebody specifically for that role, or do you see the value of putting somebody like that on special teams?
I'm probably on the latter of saying I don't agree with it. And I would say if I'm going to look specifically at Maryland this year, like Raheem Jarrett was on the punt team. I'm not saying I don't think I agree with that. I don't think he should have been covering kicks. I get why he would cover kicks, because you can get off. He's a receiver. He's used to getting off a jam, so he's not going to get blocked, and he'll probably be down there ready to make a tackle. And I can understand why Raheem would go to the head coach or the special team coach and say, hey, I want to be on those teams, because you want to have yourself on film the most to try to get to the NFL. You're trying to get to the league. You want to be and let's use Jared for example, right? You want to be a great slot receiver, but what else can you do? Because there's going to be 30 great slot receivers that are going in the draft. So what else How do you separate yourself? I'm going to be a great slot receiver, and then you're going to see me on tape. I'm going to go cover punts and make tackles. I get it. Boom. Your stock rises. So I can understand why that would happen. Now, for a program like Maryland, I would say that's not the best idea at this time. If you get the depth at the positions that you're looking for recruiting wise, then yes, down the road, maybe it would be. Use Alabama as an example. Well, okay, if that guy gets a 5-star hurt, another 5-star is coming in. So it's not the same. Programs aren't the same. So I get that aspect of Nick Saban being able to try to say, hey, if y'all don't want to play special teams, you're not going to play, because he's taking a NFL mentality. If you're in the NFL and you got guys trying to make the team, across the board, all the coaches say, if you all can't play special teams, you're not going to make this team, because we got, you got the Michael Thomas, or you got the Mike Evans, or you got the Pro Bowl receivers already in line. You're not going to come unseat those guys. What are you going to do? You need to make plays on special teams. So I think that's the mentality that Nick Saban tried to implement in Alabama, saying we are an NFL program in a sense. You have to play special teams, or we want you to play special teams. Our best athletes are going to play, but they got 40 deep best athletes, right? So it's different. But I like the mindset. I would love to see Maryland get into a position where you can put Raheem Jarrett on punt team, and if he gets hurt, making a tackle, and then the blogs go crazy saying, why was he on there? I'm like, okay, no big deal, because Octavian Smith is just as good, and now he's playing. So that's where Loxley wants to get to, and I get it, and I applaud it. I would probably wait a couple seasons till we get that depth, and then you can do that, but that's where it is.
Were you ever on the receiving end of those injuries on special teams? I read that you had a couple knee injuries. Was that because of returning?
In-game injuries, actually, I don't think I had any in-game injuries in college. I had 4 knee surgeries. I tore my meniscus 4 times, twice on each knee. So I tore it, then I tore it, then I tore it, then I tore it. I fractured this finger. I got surgery on this finger. I broke my hand. I think I dislocated my shoulder, but none of them were game related. Honestly, these are all practice. I did them in practice. Here's a funny story. So I'm playing basketball on a spring break. I guess it can't get me in trouble, but I'm playing basketball on a spring break, and I go for a layup. Boom. My knee goes out. I'm like, oh, I think I just tore my knee. So I knew the feeling. I definitely knew I tore my meniscus playing basketball on a spring break. So now I'm nervous because I'm young. I'm probably a sophomore. I'm going to go back to campus. I'm thinking, I don't know if Maryland's going to pay for my surgery if they find out that I tore it playing basketball like on spring break. So my roommate at the time, I'm like, yo, we got to go out and pretend we're doing one-on-ones, and then I'm going to come in and be hurt. So we conjured up this whole idea that we're going to go out, we're going to do one-on-ones. Hey, we're going out to practice. We're going out to practice. And I go out to practice. And then I come in 30 minutes later. I'm like, my knee's hurt. So I got, had the doctors check me out there. They're like, yeah, you need to go have surgery. So I went and have surgery on a knee that I tore in the spring break that I was nervous I would lose my scholarship for because I was young. You just didn't know. Now, it didn't happen that way, but the only injuries I had on the field, I want to say they weren't until the CFL. I dislocated my shoulder in the CFL on a kick return in Montreal, and then I broke my collarbone on another kick return in Saskatchewan in the CFL. The other ones, all in Maryland, were all practice related, and that gave me a lot of hours in the training room.
Did anyone ever find out that that's how you tore your knee up playing basketball?
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so. My roommate was my road dog, Dominique Foxworth. So I'm sure you guys know his name. We're thick as thieves, and he was tight. I came back from spring break. I said, look, dude, I don't know what's going to happen here, but I I know I can't walk, or I know I can't run. I know I tore my knee doing something. We need to figure out a way to make sure that the school pays for the surgery and I don't get in trouble. And so he was like, I mean, he's my boy. He was like, yeah, I got you. Let's just go out and pretend we're doing one-on-ones. And we went out and did it, came back in, and then it worked out.
You need a new meniscus surgeon, man. That's crazy too.
One after the other. So it was like I never got a chance to rebuild. So I would tear my right one, and then before I got a chance to recover and be fully back, I would tear the left. And then now I can't even recover that one and the right. Then I would tear the right one again. Then I tore the left one again. I mean, my senior year, I wasn't practicing on Mondays. I was getting my knees drained once every 2 weeks because they were just swelling up because I was like bone on bone. I don't have the cartilage in there anymore. The knees are rough, man. I went for 4.35 to, I don't even know, man. Not a 4.35.
You definitely left it all kind of in College Park, but we know that you played a little bit after. So can you take us through kind of your career after the University of Maryland and where that kind of took you on the football side?
Yeah, so after I went to Washington and their free agent camp, and that was a whirlwind of emotions, man. Because I was dominating in that camp. What I didn't know is that my agent told me afterwards they took x-rays of my knees when I'm coming into camp, right? Because they knew of my surgeries, they knew of my history medically. So they had already failed me on a physical, but they still let me go out there and play for like the 3 or 4 days in camp. And I'm doing fantastic. I'm the only receiver. It was an offense similar to what we ran in Maryland. So I'm the only receiver that knows the X, the Y, the H, the Z. I know all the positions. So I'm running all the positions. I'm having a blast. I'm like, it's me and Jason Campbell. We're linking up. It's fantastic. I'm calling my mom like, hey, Mom, I think I'm going to make the team, kind of deal. Then my agent calls me on the left-hand side and says, hey, dude, they failed you on a physical day one. You didn't even have a chance to make the team. I was like, what? But they let me go out there and practice for all those days. So anyway, that's the cutthroat part of that. So then my agent's like, we need to go to the CFL because no NFL team is going to probably sign off on you medically. So you need to go to the CFL. So I was like, cool, let's go to CFL. So how the CFL works is a team owns your rights. It's not a draft or it's not a free agent period. You don't get to choose. If you elect to go to the CFL, there's a team already that owns you. And Hamilton Tiger Cats was a team that owned me. So once I said to my agent, yeah, let's go to the CFL, then you go to the Hamilton Tiger Cats because they own you. And then you got to go make the team there. Most stressful 2.5 weeks of my life was the camp in Hamilton because of the reason that in the CFL, they have to have or maintain a 51% Canadian roster. So you don't know who you're competing against because you don't know how the team needs to break down the roster. So you could be the best American receiver in camp, but if they need these 2 American middle linebackers more than they need you, then they make the team and you don't make the team. So it was so stressful because you're not staring at your competition. You're dominating or you're doing whatever you're doing at receiver and you're like, yeah, I'm having a great time here. But if 4 other American D linemen get hurt or offensive linemen get hurt and they need to sign more Americans, and they're like, sorry, Suter, we need these other linebackers. So that was it. Anyway, I made the team and it was awesome. And then the first game of the season, I already mentioned, first game of the season, I'm the starting kick returner in Montreal, dislocate my shoulder on the first or second kickoff. I'm out. So now I'm out 8 weeks, dislocated shoulder, go through the rehab, come back week 8 in Saskatchewan, kickoff return, break my collarbone. Now I'm done for the season. So the boy's body just was falling apart. So I'm done for that season. Come back the next season. They failed me on a physical just to like get suited up. And then that was me saying, all right, I'm done. I've had 6, 7 surgeries, body's falling apart. And it still haunts me.
Matter. Unbelievable. Ruining the career, man. That's crazy.
Right. Just keep me healthy, man. I'm still playing. I'm probably still playing if I'm healthy.
And you outtaken Devin Hester at that point.
Oh, yeah, right? That would be Hester. That would have been great company. He's fantastic.
So you talk about like failing on the physicals. Do you think like it should matter? Like if a player is able to like perform, like you said in the camp in Washington, you're able to perform it, they failed you on the physical. Do you think that if they see that you're not able to compete, but you're like able to do it on the field, what are your feelings on that?
That's a good question, man. I was trying to say anything to my agent. I was like talking to him saying, why can't we just sign a waiver? Okay, yes, I have pre-existing conditions to arthritis. The structure of my knee is not compromised, but yeah, I get it. I don't have the cartilage and I will have maybe arthritis down the road. So I'm thinking business-wise from the league standpoint, maybe they're thinking that I would sue them in the end if I made the team and then had another injury and maybe they should have known about it. I don't know. So, I mean, I'm sure there's a dollar and cents play for the league for sure, or the teams in general. And why take a flyer on an undrafted free agent at that point that has bad knees when they don't have to. So I get that aspect of it. But then I also think if I'm willing to sign a waiver, I don't even know if there is one, but just, I mean, give me a shot. What's the big deal? If I was the best in the camp, use me up for 2 years. If my knees blow out, then they blow out. Okay, we had me for 2 years and hopefully I helped your team win. And then we part our ways. So that part was frustrating. And this is a real big tangent I'm going on here, but this is similar to like how Washington, in my opinion, ruined RG3. I just don't understand why you didn't just go all in on his skill set, let it ride. You get 3 years out of him and he go to the playoff and maybe an NFC championship game, great. And then he blows his knee out. Okay. Well, that 3 years is going to pay for whatever the salary is that you paid him if you guys are competing and in the playoff instead of trying to change him. And then you got nothing for it. He got nothing for it. So I don't know. It's a medical and it's definitely financially driven. I just don't know the numbers. But yes, I don't like it. Am I still bitter? Maybe I'm still bitter about it.
You want to take us through your infamous Gator Bowl return?
Sure, dude. Gator Bowl return is crazy. Only because, and if you've seen that clip on YouTube, like I would say athletically wasn't my best. I honestly, I have a torn meniscus during the game. I tore my meniscus maybe second week of the season, and I played the whole year with the torn meniscus, and I got surgery right after that bowl game. So I'm not at peak performance. I'm not running a 4.4 there. I'm not doing normal Suter things in returns. So as far as a return goes, it wasn't that special to me. I didn't like break 10 tackles or do anything crazy. But there's 2 things that stick out of in my mind. One is my father had a brain tumor at the time and he couldn't come to the game. The doctor said he couldn't fly. So one of the very few games, maybe 2 games that my mother and father didn't attend because of that reason. So I had like dad written on my wristband and I'm doing anything that I can hopefully make a play and, have some FaceTime on the camera for my father to just say I'm thinking about him kind of deal. So that was one. That was why it was very important to me. Number 2 was And I said in the video, I had never said a return was going to the crib before. Never. Because you just don't say it. It would be stupid to tell your teammate, hey, this is going to the house, because it's probably not every time. But for whatever reason, man, I had the vibe. I was feeling it, and I was on my knee. I usually would walk down to where I thought, let's say it was third down and whatever, and I would count off the yards, and I would go kneel down where I was going to try it out on the field to catch the punt based off the punter's average punting. And Bruce Perry was right next to me, and I just said, dude, Bruce, this is going to the crib. I don't know why. Just had a feeling. I said, this is going to the crib. Sure enough, went out there, and we took it to the house. And that's the only time I've ever said it, and it happened. And Bruce and I have a great memory because of that. We always talk about it when we see each other and laugh about it. But it was just a special moment for those two reasons. And I hate West Virginia. So that was my third one. Of all the teams, like everybody asks to like go to the Big Ten, ACC, blah, blah, blah. What do you care about? I don't care about none of it. I want to play West Virginia every year. And that's the only team. I don't care who the other 10 games are against. I want West Virginia every year and to beat the out of them. That's it.
Well, Steve,
go ahead. Sorry.
That was a great story to wrap up the podcast on. We got like less than a minute left. So thank you. Those are some amazing stories. And if you, we're going to catch you for the NC State game on color commentary.
No doubt.
Riveting analysis when Mike Loxley gets a mayo.
Yeah. Anytime, boys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
What an interview to end the semester of episodes here, guys. Steve Suter gave us a lot to talk about, but we'll let what he said speak for itself. One thing we didn't really get too much into, we talked about it right at the end, was the Gator Bowl. And it's bowl season, so we can talk a little bit about that for Maryland. The one thing, though, is the contrast that I noticed. Steve Suter played in that 2004 Gator Bowl, put his body on the line, was injured, returning kicks, and now we see just the opposite. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we've seen a lot today that bowl games, a lot of superstar players, high-level players at these top schools tend to pull out of bowl games. Most of the time they're preparing for the NFL draft or just sitting out in case of injury. And I thought it was really interesting that Steve was sharing his opinion on that, where he was like, yeah, I really want to, you just try to play as much as you can, but nowadays it's totally different where guys definitely want to avoid those injuries.
Yeah, for sure. And I think something that goes into that too is Steve was a guy who was kind of on the bubble in terms of the NFL. Like he talked about how, it was going to come down to special teams for him in terms of making the league. And I think a lot of times now you see guys who are, there's so many mock drafts and guys are so like, they're in the know of where they're going to go in the draft, so they're better able to understand what type of game this bowl game will do for them. And for guys who are in the first, second, third round, it's not worth it necessarily to raise their stock by playing in a game that, is in point not meaningless, but in a way it's not as meaningful as the regular season because you're not striving to really like win a championship. It's more, winning a game that you're going to get a meaningless corporate sponsorship trophy for.
And Steve had that injury history. He talked about how he tore both meniscuses twice. Yet, he could have torn it again in that game. And he played. He put on a show. He had that amazing touchdown.
Yeah, he had that true hatred for West Virginia, and he let it show on the pitch.
The pitch?
I think Steve just loved the game. I think he just loved what he did and I think he just embraced his role as that special teams guy, where it's like, this is how I'm going to contribute to my team. Like, yeah, I'll catch a couple balls. I'll do what I can on offense, but here's where I'm going to make my bread and butter. I'm going to be that special teams guy. I'm going to be that pain in the ass for those other teams. You're going to have to kick it away from me. It just puts those other teams in an uncomfortable spot, and he did that when he never fair caught a ball, which is a very interesting stat. That's just...
Not really trackable. Very cool stat.
Yeah.
So we got Maryland's playing NC State in the Duke's Mayo Bowl, which is one of the bowl games that actually does tend to get a little bit more notoriety just because kind of the quirks of the mayonnaise. So just quick takes on that game.
I think you got to look at. I think a big part of this game is going to be who's going to be playing quarterback for NC State. Mid-season, their starter Devin Leary, he tore his pec, so he was out. He's not going to be playing this game. But then they had two guys come in late in the season. They had MJ Morris, and then they had Ben Finney play the final games for them. MJ Morris put on a show. He played pretty well, and he's expected to be the starter next year, with Devin Leary entering the transfer portal. But we don't know if he's going to be playing this game. He got hurt against Boston College, I believe, and Ben Finney finished those final two games for them, going 2-0. His accuracy, not as much there as it is with Morris. So I think it's going to be interesting to see which one of them play for the Wolfpack. Obviously, we're hoping, as Terps fans, that Finney would be playing for them. But if MJ Morris comes in, that Terps defense might have to step up.
Yeah, definitely. I think that you look at this game and you see a Maryland team that's offensively a little depleted. You got guys like Dante Demas, Jacob Copeland all sitting out. We don't really know about Rakim Jarrett, but one would assume he's probably not going to play. So it's going to come down to the defense and guys stepping up. Jayshon Barnum having a great freshman year. What can you do in terms of that, middle of the defense and how you're able to hold it down against a pretty electric NC State offense, at least in the ACC play. So I think that's a really interesting one to watch.
I think the real winner of this bowl game will be whoever gets to dump mayonnaise on their head coach. I would love to see Loxley just covered in egg whites and vinegar.
Our very own Kevin McNulty was the one who asked that question on the press conference. He asked Loxley if he'd be able to take the bath if they won.
Wow, I think you have to.
Yeah, he said he would. So it'll be an interesting one. Bowl season for the Terps, chance to finish with their best record in the Mike Loxley era. So that's a huge step for a program, and we talk about another program who's stepping up, guys. The wrestling team for sure.
Yeah, the big thing I saw in the rankings this week, ranked as high as 16th in some polls, but one of the biggest things is Maryland is ranked ahead of 4 Big Ten teams right now, just in the rankings, and most likely more depending on where the other teams that were not ranked fall. But even within the rankings, Maryland ranked ahead of 4 teams, something you do not see very often for Maryland wrestling, ranked the highest they've been in 10 years. And so the program's absolutely on the right track.
Yeah, absolutely. Remember we talked to Clemson last week. He talked about building that new culture and kind of like getting those athletes in check, prioritizing schoolwork, what they're doing when they're not on the wrestling mat, and making sure they're focused, And I thought that was very interesting to hear from him.
Yeah, Clemson seems to be really succeeding in instilling his will and his philosophy with the guys. Just looking back to last week, the story with Cal Miller where he made him sit out from practice and really changed his mindset and helped him. I feel like that's kind of the thing where you have to go through it to understand why a coach is doing that, because some days you're going to want to skip practice. You're going to want to skip class. Maybe you're just like, I'll turn this assignment in late. I'll take a couple points off in this class, but Clemson I think he really just wants to, besides on the mat and building a good wrestling program, I think he really wants to just create and build character and produce good young men.
Cavett, how did that open practice go for you last week?
I did not attend, actually. I was watching the USA lose to the Netherlands, sadly, in the World Cup.
But, Kev, you make a very strong point there. The way you carry yourself off the mat, it's going to translate, right? If you're
exactly.
If you're not taking care of yourself, physically or, doing what your schoolwork, you said you're going to be stressed out, you're going to be thinking about other stuff, and if you can't turn that assignment on time, then you couldn't wrestle.
Yeah, he just wants these guys to have organized lives, especially in season.
Exactly. And so looking forward to Navy, upcoming weekend match. Last year, Maryland defeated Navy 18-16, so Maryland looking to stay undefeated this year. Looking a little bit at the rankings, it should be Navy's not ranked right now, but I'm pretty sure, just looking at some of the Maryland rankings, some of the Navy rankings, it's going to be a pretty good matchup. Might come down to Jaron Smith once again, going to be a 20th ranked versus 18th ranked matchup. So, Maryland fans would hope they'd have it put away by then, and I think there's a good chance that is, but if Navy hangs around, we could get to see Jaron close it out.
Yeah, Jaron's been that guy. He's been the guy to anchor the squad at the end of those meets, and he's just been putting in work, match in, match out. He's been just racking up the points, putting 5-6 points on the board for his team, so he's definitely got a large role to play in this one.
And then looking forward, a little bit of a special announcement. February 17th, for those who will be in College Park, Beauty and the Beast wrestling and gymnastics will be at the same time in Xfinity Center. So,
actually, a great name. I love that.
I was thinking about that. It's a really good name. All right, let's throw it over to women's basketball. Sam, what we got?
Yeah, Brendan, this team has been really defined, as I put it, by peaks and valleys. I mean, when you look at it, they go on the road, they beat Notre Dame, and they come back and lose to a cellar dweller Big Ten team in Nebraska who shot 48% from three, really exposing the 207th ranked perimeter defense in terms of Maryland. 270th, yeah. And I think that's something that's really been stunning to watch, and stunning for the players even. Faith Masoni has put in an availability that they just came in the locker room and like, guys, how can we go on the road and beat the 7th ranked team in the country and then lose at home to Nebraska? It's something that it isn't really acceptable in terms of that type of performance when you're looking at from a player or a coach's perspective. And I think it really shows, Brendan, kind of the talent that Maryland has, and you got probably a top 3 draft pick in Diamond Miller's getting a ton of recognition. But you also have inconsistencies with transfers, lack of really elite guard play. These are things that I think are going to continue to plague them if they can't figure it out.
Yeah, it's frustrating, like we've said all year. When you bring in that many new faces, you're going to have the high moments. If everybody's clicking, everybody's playing to their best ability, you're going to be able to get upsets. You're going to be able to beat, Notre Dame's. But on the flip side, as soon as one thing goes wrong, nobody knows where to look because they've never, as a collective team, faced adversity. And so I think it's going to be a very interesting season going forward for the women's basketball team. If they can get that coherence together,
they're an elite team if that happens, I think.
Yeah, they just got
the talent. They have the talent.
Build that chemistry. I think as the season goes on, they'll be able to gel together more. Right now, they're just a little bit inconsistent and inexperienced with playing with each other. So I think there's some exciting times ahead, definitely.
Yeah, and the Notre Dame win does more for the team than the Nebraska loss.
Yeah, and I mean, Notre Dame's a great team because they also beat UConn, who comes to town from Maryland on Sunday. Expect to be a pretty packed crowd at Xfinity Center, people say.
Blackout.
Yeah, blackout.
Just like we had last night on campus.
Yeah, it's a little side note.
Power went out.
College Park campus just went out last night.
Yeah. And
absolute turmoil.
It was wild. And somebody else who shoots the lights out is UConn. They shoot it from 43% from deep, which is going to be a real issue for Maryland considering.
Yeah, you said 270th ranked.
Yeah, I mean
it's not the matchup you want.
And when you shoot 43% from like UConn, you have elite shooters like Lucinecha Lopez, who shoots at a really high clip. I think that it's really going to stress the Maryland defense in a lot of ways. Problem is for UConn is Zizi Fudge, who was pretty, in terms of the clear front runner of winning, her or Aaliyah Boston winning the best player in college basketball. She's out. She's out for 2 to 3 weeks, so she won't be able to come to town, which kind of selfishly sucks because I won't be able to see Paige Buchers or Zizi Fudge, who are two of the more high-profile names in women's basketball. But they lost 74-60 to Notre Dame, as we said. So I think it'll be a really interesting game to watch. I think both offenses are going to have a pretty easy time scoring the ball. And it really just comes down to, I think, if Diamond Miller can dominate her matchup against Aaliyah Edwards. She stepped up in these big games where scouts of there, Baylor, Notre Dame, both had 25-plus points, hit the game winner against Notre Dame. So if she plays to her potential as she has been, and Maryland's able to not guard the 3-ball but limit it, I think they have a pretty good chance. And that's kind of a story of the season, right? Is you guard the 3-ball, you generally are able to win games, and because they have an offense who can do it, and it'll be pretty interesting to watch. And the team who does guard the 3-ball well, next Maryland basketball opponent for the men's side.
Yeah, Tennessee, they are a very good defensive team. They allowed the 3rd least points in the nation. But on the flip side, they cannot shoot the 3-ball that well. They only average 33.2% from distance. So I think the 3-ball is going to become key for the Terps this game. If they can shoot it well against that great defense, and they can defend that 3-ball well against a team who can't really shoot it that well, they'll keep the game closer and maybe have a chance to pull it through at the end.
Yeah, and we've seen just Maryland from the arc. It's they've been shooting the ball well. They have Don Carey, actually. Interesting fact about this is that at home he's shooting somewhere in the 10 to 20% range from 3, but on the road I believe it's somewhere closer to the 50% range. So
that should never happen.
That is, maybe the Xfinity rims are not his friend.
We can talk about rims all we want. The Wisconsin game, that was fascinating.
The Milwaukee
Bucks mascot. Maybe a little bit of fixing games there. No, joking. But that was, Maryland, like you said, just 3-ball, and just shooting in general. When it's hot. But when they're not knocking down shots, it's like the scoring it's hard to look for somebody who's like going to be the complete backbone because it's been a little bit spread out. And so in big games, you don't know.
The thing is, though, that we all talk about the 3-ball, and that's such a high variable thing, right? A team can guard it well, and you can still shoot extremely well. It's not something that you can really, you can be a good shooting team, but it's going to come and go. You're going to have off shooting nights, and this Tennessee team will challenge it, guys. I mean, they have such elite length. Josiah Jordan-James is one of the best defenders in the country. Zakai Ziegler at the point of attack doesn't have great length, is really small actually, but he's so quick and is able to get teams off their sets, which I think is something that Maryland, I think he could give Jameer Young some trouble just exploiting maybe a little bit about that pick and roll that they love to run. And then you got guys along the wings. Santiago Vescovi is a really smart team defender. Rick Barnes just runs a really cool defensive scheme. They make sure to, they're more of a no-help type of team. They're going to stay in front of their guys and not help off shooters, and I think that's what limits the perimeter shots in terms of Maryland. So I think that is going to be a key issue. And Tennessee has their weaknesses, right? If you're going to give up three-pointers, that's how they lost to Colorado, who's one of the worst Power 5 teams, but then you beat Kansas. So I think this game, it really just comes down to, can they shoot it, like Mike talked about, Tennessee, and what does Maryland do on the wings? Because that's where the most of their scoring has come from. The Donta Scotts, the Keem Harts, Ian Martinez had a good start to the year. How are they able to match up with Tennessee's elite length, I think?
And then one last key is turnovers. I mean, watching that Wisconsin game, looking at the stat sheet afterwards, they're mostly even with the Badgers. The one thing that went wrong for them was turnovers. They led 14-8 in turnovers against the Badgers.
And Wisconsin doesn't turn you over, which is a problem.
So that was just the key factor in that game, why they lost. It was mostly even.
I think fouls as well. They had the bonus for Wisconsin had the bonus for the last 9 or so minutes of the second half. So it's just they just took some rather stupid fouls. I think Juju Reese got a little bit unlucky. He got some unfavorable calls, but you got to just clean it up. You can't be playing sloppy defense like that. You got to know, stay in front of your man, break down, and just play team defense.
And then the next game they're going to be playing is against UCLA at home in College Park. Sam, you want to kind of preview that a little bit?
Yeah, UCLA coming in at 7th on Ken Pom. Biggest thing with them is they're a veteran team, really, at the point guard spot. Tiger Campbell, they don't turn the ball over. Mick Cronin's teams are generally known for that. They don't do it. Maryland's going to have to be able to generate offense in the half court because they will not be able to get out and run in transition. And this game is fascinating, guys, because Maryland, we talk about it a lot. The wings are really what do the punch of scoring. Jameer Young's had a good start, but their real talent is on the wings. UCLA's probably got the best wing duo in the country. Jaime Jaquez and Jalen Clark. 17 points a game for Jaime Jaquez. Really just operates. He's got a beautiful game in the mid-range. I think it's kind of why he hasn't gone to the league yet, is his perimeter shot isn't great, only shoots at like 28% clip from 3. But his ability to get downhill, finish with his left and right, and then his pull-up game is just chef's kiss. It's gorgeous in terms of how he's able to get to the elbow, make shots, be able to create out of the high post. I think that's something that's super exciting to watch as just a basketball fan. And then Jalen Clark, guys, really kind of popped onto the scene this year, having a great year, averaging around 14 a game. And then you got great bench options. Amari Bailey, who's a stud freshman out of Sierra Canyon, and Dave Singleton are both really good shooters. Bailey is a super, super athlete. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Terrence Shannon, who gave Maryland some trouble. So I think that's going to be a real issue for Maryland in terms of matching up with those guys.
Yeah, I mean, this has been the marquee game that Maryland fans have circled on their calendars. It's during finals week, get a little break, Xfinity Center, going to be going crazy. Game was sold out 2 weeks in advance. So
going to have to get there a little earlier this time.
No kidding. Yeah, so, and I think that it should fuel them in terms of that type of atmosphere. And guys, it's a huge one for Juju Reese, too. We've talked about it all year. The thing we know about UCLA, great wings, great point guard. The bigs aren't really where that rest of the team is. They're starting a freshman, Adam Bona, who really is just kind of, that lob threat, doesn't really do much on offense. If Reese can get his a little bit, I think it puts so much more pressure on the rest of the UCLA team to then have to overhelp. Then you can find shooters, that type of thing, like they did, in terms of the early season games. He dominated. You have to draw help, kick out. You got Carey, Hakeem Hart, Donta Scott. These are all players that benefit off of Juju Reese's activity down low.
Terps fans, if you're listening to this, I mean, you show up, because you heard Willard. One of the first things he said after the Illinois game was that the fans played a huge factor into that. I mean, you could hear it. It was loud. It was sold out.
The environment was electric.
It was
all the stars are out. SVP, Francis Tiafo, even Locks was in attendance.
Definitely. I mean, it's going to be a huge game. What do you guys think in terms of this type of 3-game stretch, they've already lost one. What do you think in terms of, if you can get one, how big is that for this team?
Yeah, it's a great question, Sam. I'd written down if Maryland can win one of these games, that's a huge positive.
I would say so as well, but you can't get blown out in either of them. You have to keep them close. If you're going to lose, you have to keep it close. Obviously, we would prefer to win both of these games, and I think it's definitely possible. We've seen Maryland play at a very high level this year, but it's just you must win at least one of these games.
Personal opinion, I think Tennessee blows them out, and I think they respond and beat UCLA. That's just my feel for it. I think Tennessee's a horrible matchup with their length and ability to guard on the wings, and then I think UCLA, I just think at home, like you guys talked about, electric atmosphere, I think the matchup is much more favorable in terms of how they play, so I would expect to win.
I think the mayor of College Park, Kevin Willard, is going to have to cook something up real special.
Yeah, definitely.
How accurate do you think the 13th ranking is?
Like end of season, do we think we look back and be like, maybe they were higher or lower?
Like, do you think we peak here? Or do you think Maryland peaks here?
Yeah, I think so. I just think it's so hard to go. The Big Ten is a gauntlet, right? And they just unless they win these two, they're not going to have a ton of power to their resume because they didn't beat a marquee opponent in the non-conference. They had solid wins, but none that were this is a win over Gonzaga or Duke. So I think 12, 13. I think they'll be ranked for a decent amount throughout the year, but I think that's probably where they peak, if I had to guess.
When I look at the Big Ten, I look at issues they're going to have down the road against big men. You look at Michigan, you have Hunter Dickinson. Who's going to be able to match up with him? Julian Reese?
Zach Edey.
Exactly.
He's been gross this year.
There are some big men in this conference that are going to pose to Terps some problems.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an exciting time, though, for Terps basketball.
Absolutely.
For
Yeah,
sure.
I disagree with Sam. I think Maryland's coming up. I think Maryland's going to end in the top 10. I am convinced. Maybe I'm a little biased. Being a student at the University of Maryland, obviously I want the best. But they've put in some dominant performances. They've smoked early on the rankings. We saw St. Louis. I was convinced after that win over Illinois. I think Wisconsin, they put in a great performance and just got a little bit unlucky. That's a tough environment.
Road loss, yeah.
They didn't necessarily play. Well, they definitely didn't play as well.
They didn't play good.
They didn't
and
play.
Still were close. I agree.
Yeah, they didn't play their game, and they still lost within. What was it? They lost by 5.
Yeah, no. I mean, it was a close game down the stretch, Kevin. I agree. I see them in that 10 to 20 range rather than the top 10 team that would it take. You know what I mean? So I think it's a healthy debate in terms of where they finish.
Yeah. We'll have to see what happens in the court, and rankings mean nothing. So. All right.
The only thing that matters,
March.
Gotta go dancing.
Absolutely. All right. Let's go into some picks here.
Some
Final
rankings
picks.
that do matter are these picks.
These rankings absolutely do matter.
So in
Sitting
first
up in my
place,
chair.
I'm still at the top, 15 and 11. Next two spots are pretty close. Cabot 13, 12 and 1, and then Brendan 13 and 13. That push right there for Cabot.
So does that mean somebody's worse than 500? Oh God.
Sam at 12 and 4.
12 and 14.
12 and 14. Yes. Don't want to give him too much credit.
So give us the stakes here. Final picks. What we got, Mike?
So since this is going to be the last time we do college football picks, we're going to do 6 picks this week. This is make or break. I think that so after this, we're going to have a winner for college football, and then we're going to have a winner for college basketball.
Yeah.
Sounds right. I like that.
All right, so this is the make or break week with 6 picks, and I'm going to start it off. We're not going to do analysis since it's so many picks. I'm going to do Cincinnati at -1.5 versus Louisville, Michigan -9.5 versus TCU, Georgia -6.5 versus Ohio State, Utah +1.5 versus Penn State, Wisconsin +2.5 versus Oklahoma State, and Alabama -4.5 versus Kansas State.
Solid. I couldn't pick UMass this week, so I picked the Fenway Bowl. Louisville +1.5. Lost their coach playing against Cincinnati. I think they're just going to be fired up. Myrtle Beach Bowl, UConn +9.5. Haven't seen a bowl game in a while. Also think they're going to be fired up. Barstow, Arizona Bowl, Wyoming +2.5. Citrus Bowl, LSU -6.5. Rose Bowl, Utah +1.5. Orange Bowl, Tennessee +4.5. Over to you, Sam.
Yeah, funny that there's a Barstool Bowl for sure. I mean, it's pretty hilarious how far we've come in terms of corporations.
I got to respect getting the name out there.
Oh, definitely.
Wyoming is a team, definitely, so we'll see.
I'm going to start with the team that is close to all of our listeners' hearts, and that's Maryland -2.5 versus NC State. I got Oregon -9.5 versus North Carolina. South Carolina plus 4.5 versus Notre Dame. Wake Forest minus 1.5 versus Mizzou. Ole Miss minus 3.5 versus Texas Tech. And LSU minus 6.5 versus Purdue. It's hard to tell with bowl games, guys. Like, guys are always injured.
They're total coin flips.
Yeah, but I mean, it's going to be an interesting slate, and I think that this week it'll breed champions for sure. I think in terms of what we're looking at, in terms of teams who step up versus teams who might just kind of coast through and have a nice holiday weekend.
All right, guys. So I have some fun picks this week. I really just went based off the vibes, and I was actually
Is that a new strategy? Have you ever done that before?
Yeah, it is. Believe it or not, yeah, it is a new strategy. And, I didn't go based off vibes of the teams, except for one of the matches. I did
like colors. What'd you do?
No,
mascots.
I did the name of the bowl.
Ooh. Oh, I love that.
I did the name of the bowl, which I honestly forgot at this point. I didn't write down, but first game. Whatever bowl name this is, I took SMU minus 2.5 versus BYU. Second game, Boise State plus 7.5 versus North Texas. Oh, here's the music. It's Minecraft music. All right, that's enough of that. And then we got next game, San Jose State minus 4.5 versus Eastern Michigan. And then next game, Marshall minus 9.5 versus UConn. And then Rice plus 5.5 versus Southern Mississippi.
Oh, I just love that pick, Gavin. That's great.
Rice, it feeds the world. It's just, you can't live without it pretty much. And then last game, this is the one that I went. Well, actually, I guess the Rice one was also kind of based off the name of the team, but this one really, this might be the best mascot in all of college football.
Give it to us.
The Louisiana Lafayette Ragin' Cajuns plus 3.5 over Houston. Come on. Give it to me. Yeah,
give it to him.
Give it to me. Give me the lead. Mike. I'm coming for you.
Mike, what are we doing in case of a tie? We do pick a tiebreaker game.
I mean, we can do the college football national championship. Right there, pick the championship.
All right, pick
the
champion winner.
Yeah.
All right.
Or we could do if there's a tie, it would be the championship.
Yeah. That sounds good to me.
But you can't pick the same as the other person, obviously.
Oh.
We'll pick it when the time comes.
Okay.
I'm gonna go 6-0, so it won't matter.
I'm pretty confident that I'll go 6-0 too.
Yeah, I mean you control your own destiny, so go for 6-0 and you'll be okay.
Now we're moving on to one of our final segments.
Make us terrific, please. Make it terrific.
It's a terrific Terrapin of the Week. Let me take you back to a cold winter day in College Park in 1982.
Are you Jack Frost?
Fans flock into the old Cole Fieldhouse to see the Terps take on number 3 ranked UCLA. The Terps only played UCLA twice before in the 70s, dropping both games. But this would be a different night for Maryland as they went on to win 80-79 in overtime. Someone who was on that Maryland team who you guys might know is freshman Len Bias. But that night, Maryland was led by the duo of Ben Coleman, who scored 27 points, and our terrific Terp this week, Adrian Branch, who dropped 26. Branch grew up in the DMV area, attending DeMatha High School and winning the McDonald's All-American Game MVP before starring at the University of Maryland from 1981 to 1985. At Maryland, he would be a 2-time All-ACC and led the Terps to the ACC Championship in 1984, which they lost. He's currently the 5th all-time leading scorer for Maryland with 2,017 career points. He was drafted in the second round of the 1985 NBA draft and would bounce around the league, however, winning the 1987 NBA championship with the Los Angeles Lakers. You can now catch Adrian Branch on ESPN as a college basketball analyst. So that is our terrific
Spent some
Terp.
time overseas as well. Really, very versatile.
Yeah.
And congrats to him.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Adrian.
It's a great honor.
Highest honor you can receive. And there's been a lot of cool, terrific Terps we've had over the semester.
Van Rootselaar.
But we're coming to a close here. We're ending the semester one, and we got to experience a lot of really cool Maryland sports, really cool interviews we got to sit down with. So kind of just taking a brief look back over the course of this pod, and really it's been awesome to sit down with all of you guys and be able to experience some really cool guests. Cav, who was your favorite interview, and also give me your favorite Maryland sports play
from this semester?
Okay, so favorite interview, I would have to say I would pick Alex Clemson. I thought it was a really interesting interview. not many people knew about how college wrestling works. It's not really the most popular college sport.
Non-revenue sport, so yeah.
Yes, it's just it's one of those ones that fly under the radar. It's really for the players, so I think it was very interesting to get some insight into how the team operates and then just get a close look at what was going on, and to learn that Maryland wrestling is definitely in good hands.
Yeah, Clemson was a dope interview, and that was really cool to listen to. And give us your favorite play now.
I would say, I would have to refer to my good friend of the alphabet for this one. Hunter George, can you spell sauce?
Can you spell it?
Sauce. Number 7, when he went the length of the pitch to bag one, and it was just definitely my favorite play of the year. It's just a highlight on his amazing career that he's had as a Terrapin. And yeah, that'll wrap up my my semester.
Great work this semester, Kev.
Thank you.
Brendan, you want to go?
I'd love to go. Favorite interview. This may raise some eyebrows, but Josh Klubes.
Oh yeah.
I think maybe you guys knew I was going there. I think we've had some great guests going back. Looking people who've played in Maryland athletics, people who currently work, coaches. But going into that interview, I knew absolutely nothing about the esports team. Klubes gave us a great insight on his personal Fortnite story, as well as the esports team at Maryland inaugural year. It was just a really cool interview to get on the podcast, and I'm eternally grateful for Josh Klubes sitting down with us for those 20 minutes on that Thursday evening. Favorite play in the season. Let me take you back to a different time. August 25th. First Maryland game I attended as a student. I was fortunate enough to sit beside my roommate. I didn't know anything about anything, and I especially didn't know anything about any of the Maryland soccer roster. But I saw a guy come onto the pitch, Colin Griffith, and I saw it in his eyes. And I lean over to Cavett and I go, "This guy's gonna score." Game was tied at the time. Maryland needed a goal to cap it off, get a big marquee win at the beginning of the season.
Was that New Hampshire against?
New Hampshire.
It was.
Who
was ranked number
very
9
silly
at the
state.
time?
Oh, just the nines are aligning. Is
The
that
worst,
good? Is that bad?
the worst New England state, would you say, as a Massachusetts native yourself?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
We can do a ranking maybe once the podcast gets terminated, once I stop the recording, because this would be very boring. Yeah, Colin Griffith comes to the box, nets one. I look over at Cavett, and it was just electric.
It was. We were chilling in the student section right behind the goal. Colin just taps one across the line, and we just erupted.
I mean, Cavett probably thought I had some crazy soccer knowledge.
I thought you had some
He soon found out that I didn't know anything really. But
they then convinced me to go to the Delaware game the next day or next game, and it was kind of
the Denver game,
or Denver, yeah, and that was not as good. But that play, I remember hearing about that, and that's pretty incredible that you got that.
Yeah, scoring his first goal as a freshman too. Way to burst onto the scene in College Park, and Colin ended up having a heck of a year for the young lad.
You could say Brendan and Colin both burst onto the scene that night.
You could, and you should say that.
Yeah.
Soon after the women's volleyball team, follow me on Twitter. Okay.
Yeah, and Mike, you're a field hockey reporter. You had a great semester, obviously. Mm-hmm. Take us through your favorite interview and your favorite play.
Favorite interview, I'm probably going to have to go with the first big one we ever had, James Gist.
G to the I to the S to the T.
If somebody didn't take Gist, I would have upset.
I knew Mike was going to take Gist.
We got some amazing stories from him about playing in College Park. The fans on Route 1 after they had a giant away win, playing overseas, what the differences were like over there, the fans overseas. Really interesting stuff from Gist. The story about when he had the assistant coach run straight after him after he complained about a call in practice, if you guys remember that one.
Yeah, I mean, Gist is just...
he's a G.
Gist was amazing. And then...
To the I to the S to the T.
Yep.
Favorite play... I would have to go with a sequence. I'd have to say the shootout against Syracuse to go into the Final Four for field hockey.
Our very own beat writer.
They were trailing that game.
Man after his own sport.
Trailing that game, came back. Nobody scored in overtime. Went to the shootout. Went to extra shots. Goalkeeper Paige Keefe came up with
got your money's worth there.
4 consecutive saves, and then Hope Rose came up with the game-winning goal in the shootout. Just a great sequence to watch.
Soon after Hope left the building, but
yeah,
or the team, they lost. But
tough 2 weeks against the Wildcats for them.
We don't have to rehash that, guys.
That's right. They had a great season. They
Yeah,
had a very
And that was an
respectable,
electric moment.
It was very exciting.
Great season.
Another goal that I would have to say that was up there was her goal against Virginia. Must have gone through like 7 Terps sticks before it got to her.
I was at that one. That was a sick
She
game.
dove forward, tapped it into the goal. Pretty cool stuff.
What about the Van Rootselaar flick?
I mean, Van Rooslaar had so many goals. I'd have to say
It's one play, Mike. Come on now.
Come on.
Mike, how about Mike's favorite play of the year was the entire field hockey
The
season.
entire field hockey season.
Check out his content on TSC, guys, if you want to relive the
And
glory
then
days. For
last
field
but not
hockey.
least, we are going to go to Mr. Sam Jane, Big
Yeah.
J journalist.
I would say my favorite interview. We had a lot of really good ones, and you guys, and they were all kind of unique, which was cool. I thought is that each guy had a person had a different story. But I would say, almost sentimentally for me, but also just like I thought this was a cool interview, was Tyler Cronin. It was
Solid. I almost went that too.
It was the
Yeah.
first one, and it was just kind of funny sitting down. Like me and Brendan, we like both kind of had to jump through some hoops to get it. We didn't really know what the whole process was.
Getting that interview was like
SIDs.
getting that interview was
like talking to
absurdly
the
difficult.
president, dude. It's like, but anyway, Tyler made it worth it because he was a really cool interview. I mean, talked a lot about stuff that, as a baseball player, I didn't even know, and also just like the ideas of what it was like being a trainer. And I just thought that was a really cool interview that we got, and it really kind of set us off on terms of what type of stories and podcast
Set the bar high for sure.
stuff we wanted to get. So Tyler was a really cool guest, and it was cool sitting down with like as our first like podcast. I thought was pretty dope. And then favorite play of the semester. I mean, nobody's took it, but for me it was it's hard for me to choose like a football play just because you're not like in there. But I was in the stands for the basketball game when Jameer Young hit the shot against Illinois. And
Great pick.
I mean, it was just an electric moment. Young, I mean, he's him. That was just an incredible shot, incredible
You
atmosphere.
kind of foreshadowed it with the previous week's Trivik Terrapin.
Yeah, with Cowan a little bit too. I mean, and it was just really.
Hometown heroes.
It was my first Maryland men's basketball game, and to see like that electricity, like that, I kind of craved when I came here. That's like, not a reason I came here, but it was something that was a highlight because I never really, growing up in Michigan with the big house, it's football, not really basketball, so that was really cool. And then doing it with Brendan and my roommate, like going insane, like that was just, I'll remember that for a while because that was a really cool, really cool moment.
Yeah, he had absolutely no business hitting that shot. Just iced the game, put a dagger in the hearts of all those Illinois fans.
Yeah, but I mean, all really cool interviews, all really cool plays, and I think that it was really cool. Just this pod. I mean, everybody out there listening, thank you. We appreciate the first semester. We're not going anywhere. Just a little brief hiatus as we figure out, with our exams. We all got to survive those first. So, Cav, take us away.
One last thing. I think it'd be a disservice to not mention the amazing interviews with Steve Suter, Scott McBrien, Jerron Smith. Just amazing stories from all of them. Suter, especially the other night before, we could have gone on for hours with him.
Yeah, all interviews. We appreciate it, and it was just it was a great time to sit down with them. So, Cav, one last time, take us away for the semester.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening and tuning in to Under the Shell, presented by Terrapin Sports Central. It's been a pleasure as always. Happy holidays. Be safe and healthy. Good night.